that's like the real entrepreneurs. Like when we hear that expression, entrepreneurship is like eating glass as you stare into the abyss.
And so just some waste of money, you're just going to throw away that money. I was like, yeah, but that's not the point, right? There's work every bit in that. How do you make it give people what they're expecting to see, right?
You know, about raising capital. I was like, no, you build a business by like building your business. And when you have cash, you build stuff. And like, that's the way I was raised. So I didn't know anything about the world.
Welcome to Money Mavericks, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of finance, investment, and entrepreneurship.
I'm Kirk Drake.
And I'm Daryl Hicks. Together, we're here to bring you the latest insights, expert opinions from the trailblazers who are redefining success in the financial world. Welcome to another episode of the Money Mavericks podcast. Kirk and I super excited today to have Patrick Davis with us. Patrick, you and I have been friends and got to know each other through YPO a few years back. I've been amazed at some of the awesome stuff that you've built as a serial entrepreneur, raising capital, using bankers, exiting, the things that you've done since you exited out of your most recent business. But I'm really, really grateful for you to make the time to jump in with us today, buddy.
Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
Super cool. Well, as usual, Kirk and I love to kind of kick off with, we can launch up LinkedIn and take a look at your profile. And there's a lot of really interesting businesses in there. But I always love to understand, kind of what's the origin story? What brought you into this and why entrepreneurship, and especially serial entrepreneurship? They're a rare breed, I find these days, people who are suckers for a lot of pain, it seems, in a lot of cases. But kind of walk us through a little bit of, how you got to where you were with the businesses that you've built and exited out of as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to go back a bit. So my parents owned small businesses my whole life. I mean, and they were computer consulting businesses. So they did hardware, software, programming, never got more than 5 or 10 employees, saw them struggle pretty hard. They taught me how to program. I mean, man, I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade when I did a Commodore 64 science fair project where we did like a video game that they had me build. And kind of went from that. Had my first full-time job as a programmer when I was 17, working for DuPont, like the DuPont company. And then went to work for a software coding house. And I realized how not great of a programmer I was, if I'm being honest. I was just very mediocre. But I got a lot of stuff done, and I knew business. I could like take any business problem and build an ERP system. I mean, we built ERP systems for funeral homes, for body scheduling, and for appliance companies with install and field service, like anything you can think of, right? Like we had built at my parents' tiny software.
2 things there that I want to pull on real quick. So one, what was the video game that you programmed originally? Because mine was some stupid turtle game.
Mine was Blackjack, and also on the predecessor to the Commodore 64 was the VIC-20. We're really dating ourselves here, but yeah, like coding in BASIC, and I wrote a Blackjack game for myself, which was like super fun. So I think we all share some common threads there. That's hilarious. What was the other question you wanted to ask, Kirk?
Yeah, so the other one was, I've for years have joked about why hasn't someone built the audio response system for a funeral home? So you call in, press 1 if it's your dad, press 2 if it's your mom. Open casket, close casket.
It's good they don't want to give you pricing.
Yeah, exactly.
They want to do the shock and awe when they're in front of you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, I don't know, my whole life I just grew up like building stuff. Like from 13, 14, 15, I worked, I worked full time when I was a junior in high school. So it kind of puts it into perspective. Went to the code shop, loved that, learned a ton about programming I didn't know, like got way better at programming. And then I became basically the IT director and head programmer for this small company here in Buffalo that did insurance inspection work. Basically, for people who don't know, whenever you sell a house or get new insurance, someone comes to your house and inspects it most of the time. Even if you're not home, it's in your contract that they can do that. And they're looking for risk, pools, dogs, crappy roof, but that kind of stuff. It goes way deeper than that, but that's like the real high level. And I helped that company by building out, really, it was in 1998 or 1999, helping them to build out the first system where they could actually process digital photos and their inventory and then collect all that data and then present that back to the insurance carriers. And they went from, call it 50 people total to like when I left there, they had 1,000, I think. And they did that 5 or 6 years. I mean, they crushed it. So loved it there, but I got the itch to go start something. So we noticed that there was a component missing when we were building out this other software package that nobody was filling. And it was a very simple thing. It's for diagramming homes and commercial businesses and figuring out square footage, complex polygons. We built that out, and that was where we started Udall. And that product got to about $500,000 a year in revenue. Funniest story I had is that a large appraisal software company hated our competitor, and the guy flew in on his private jet, and it was so novel to me because who do I know with a private jet? Like, this is crazy. And he flies in, and he's like, I want to do a deal with you. I'm like, $2 million for the source code. He's like, we're not that far apart. Flies in on his jet. He was crazy, serial entrepreneur, like tons of energy. And we ended up doing a deal with him, and we used that money to build out our next big product, which is our loss control product. And that's where it all started, man. And I didn't do a lot of the coding on that project, if I'm being honest. I maybe did like 5% of it. It really came down to me selling and me being able to fund the company bootstrapped for a long time. We did consulting services, mostly on our own product, but also consulting projects too for people, basically to keep the lights on while we built our products and got market acceptance. So that's where it started.
So wait a minute. You glossed over something really, really quickly here that I'd just love to come back to and unpack a bit. You've built up this business, you've bootstrapped it, which, by the way, huge props. All three of the guys in this call here have raised capital, but really cut their teeth bootstrapping businesses organically funded. I'd like to think that, no disrespect to the people that have only ever built businesses, raising capital, but I think that's like the real entrepreneurs. Like when we hear that expression, entrepreneurship is like eating glass as you stare into the abyss. That's the thing that
I think the highlight I would say is, am I going to make payroll this week? Like, I mean, like when I think of it, like that's the headline.
And all these lives, like, and you that are depending on you. And then you think about like the downstream consequences of like their partners and their children and all the people that are relying on them, and it all rolls up to you. Like it's a massive amount of pressure. But I want to come back to this story of like you've built this business, like $500,000 in ARR, bootstrap business, and this guy flies in on a private jet and says, "Hey, scrappy entrepreneur, I like what it is that you've built. I want to give you like $2 million for it."
We ended up south of that, but yeah, that's where I started.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, what was the self-talk? Like well, first of all, how did that make you feel when this guy flies in?
Very nervous because I had 3 people working for me, and I had to seem like we were a bigger company to demand $2 million. So I actually called a furniture rental place and filled my office with rental furniture. And then I had my friends and family show up and pretend to be employees. I guess the term would be nervous.
Awesome.
Oh my God. I love this.
I'm laughing because we have this winery in Southern Oregon, and when we weren't ready to start making wine any yet, but the back area, which is kind of like an event space, I really wanted to look like a barrel room and felt like that was a really key piece. And so I had this argument with my wife. I was like, I'm going to go buy 30 empty wine barrels for like $3,000 or $4,000. And people will come in and they'll assume that we're making wine in there, but there's no wine being made here yet, right? And she's like, that's just a waste of money. You're just going to throw away that money. I was like, yeah, but that's not the point, right? There's work every bit in that. How do you make it, give people what they're expecting to see, right?
The guy's not going to hand me a $2 million check if he knows it's like 3 people.
Right.
Like he'd be like, okay, you're being unreasonable. So let's talk about $500,000.
Right.
Like I know you need it,
Right.
I love it. Some of the fake it till you make it energy. It's fantastic.
Well, so a weird part of sometimes like the real key intellectual property occurs on 4 Saturday mornings in a row for 3 hours each, where you've zoned off and gone down this rabbit hole, and you build this thing that you don't even think is that impressive, but somehow the rest of the world values way more than whatever you thought it was, right? Like,
I think it was key too that my competitor just had a knack of pissing people off because they had a monopoly, and so they used to just really push on every client they had. And when another option came into market, there were some people who were really bad. I mean, the guy with the private jet who got upped by my competitor is like, well, screw him. I'm going to figure out a way to mess with this guy, right? So
yeah,
being the beneficiary of that.
Yeah, that's super cool. So, and like, I guess one last question I had on this, and then we can jump back into the next business. But like, so now that to me is like always a major milestone in an entrepreneur's journey. Like they say that you go legit when you get your first dollar of revenue from outside sources. But to me, one of the major milestones that very few entrepreneurs ever get to is someone walking up to you and saying, "Hey, this thing that you built from scratch with just a few people around you, I think it's really cool and really valuable, and I'd like to give you some money for it." I also find it interesting what you did with that money, but maybe just unpack that for us a little bit. Like, how did that affect you when you first closed that transaction? And then maybe as a jumping off from that, like, why the decision to go and take that into and invest it into the next business, or kind of like what exactly was the self-talk and what was happening during that?
On Money Mavericks, we don't just talk about making money. We explore the innovative strategies and bold decisions that drive real change. Whether you're an experienced investor, a budding entrepreneur, or just someone looking to make smarter financial choices, we've got something for you.
Every week, we're going to sit down with industry leaders, visionaries, and mavericks who share their journeys, challenges, and breakthroughs, from contrarian views on market trends to the secrets behind building a successful startup. You get an inside look at what it takes to thrive in today's economy.
And we promise to keep it real, engaging, and most importantly, actionable. No jargon, no fluff. Just straightforward conversations that you can apply to your own financial journey.
So get ready to challenge your thinking, expand your knowledge, and take control of your financial future. This is Money Mavericks,
where we turn financial dreams into realities and mavericks into legends.
I think we always knew that a diagramming tool would never get above $1 million of recurring revenue. I didn't see it, so from early on, we sort of knew that we wanted to do something larger, and we had an idea that what we wanted to build was a loss control product, but we really wanted to also put some distance in between us and my old employer. Even though there was no agreement, there was no IP issues or anything like that, it was a respect thing. But we always had in the back of our head, like, we should build a loss control platform because there's none out there. There was zero at the time, really. And we kept getting approached by people, can you build me a system? And eventually, between that money and us saying, yeah, I'll build you a system, I'm keeping the IP, give me $300,000. That's how we bootstrap stuff, man. It was like basically charging people, keeping the IP, they get a copy of it, they can go do whatever they want for their services business, and we can restrict them. But we were going to be a software company that took recurring revenue, and to bootstrap it though, you had to get that quick hit cash. It had to be upfront services type crack money. I mean, that's what services is. It's like, I do an hour, I get paid $200. Like, I can make payroll, right? Like, whereas recurring revenue, a lot of times you're putting millions and millions of dollars into a product in order to get, a small chunk of that each year out of these clients. So, and I think it was just necessity to, at some point, like at the time, we didn't want to raise capital. I didn't know anything about raising capital. I was like, no, you build a business by building your business. And when you have cash, you build stuff. And that's the way I was raised. So I didn't know anything about the world of some VC is going to give you $1 million and you can go burn it in a barrel. I didn't even know that concept back then.
Yeah, exactly. Which, again, that's like the old school kind of like legit way of going out and building business. But obviously, at some point, you did learn a lot about raising institutional capital. So maybe talk us through that piece. You've taken this seed money, right? You came out of this exit. I was going to ask.
It was still the same company. It wasn't even an exit. They actually just did a source code deal. So
cool.
We actually kept that product.
So it was an asset purchase where they just stripped it out of the company.
Oh, we could still sell the product. They just wanted a source code copy for their own distribution and modification.
Oh, very interesting.
They gave us that money clean, and we just kept moving on. And we still sell that product to this day.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. So now you're taking that capital and you're investing it into this other idea that you had. Again, you're kind of just seeing you're out there, you're in the market, and you're seeing gaps, right? And this is a super common thread with entrepreneurs, by the way, is they're out there active in a business. They might be starting off in this direction, but then all of a sudden they see, oh, there's a gap over here. Well, I'm going to go solve that problem, especially if they're solving a problem for themselves, like they're scratching their own itch kind of thing. But because you're in the market and you're seeing gaps, then you're able to go develop things. But at what point did you bring in the institutional capital?
Yeah, so we got to about $2 million of recurring. And
which product was this on now?
That was just on the loss control product. We did about another $500,000 in that diagramming product as well at the time. For about $2 million in recurring on just the loss control product. And I remember we had just started signing up insurance carriers. Up to that point, we were only working with insurance vendor companies, and they have less money to spend, maybe $10,000 a month. Insurance carriers have $100,000 a month to spend on a product like that, the biggest ones. And so we started signing up insurance carriers, and I wasn't really prepared for the amount of touch they want. I mean, they expect you are a full-blown company, services company. You are putting tons of people on their project. It's going to be managed a certain way. So we signed up some very large insurance carriers, and then we started outpacing our cash. I mean, there was nothing else to say about it. We were growing at 105% a year, from 2 to 4 in 1 year, and then from 4 to 8 in a year. And that's really tough. I mean, that's not like pure SaaS revenue, like, oh, it's the same product and I just signed up more people and turned them on. Like, no, like this is like heavy duty ERP implementation, like long sales cycle stuff. And so we were just outpacing cash. I mean, it was to the point where like I took an SBA loan, and like SBA takes a UCC against your house, like things like this to make the money. And then I went out for mezz debt, and no one wanted to touch me because I didn't have professional capital on my cap table, which is nuts,
Right.
but true at the time. And I had all these VCs kind of knocking on my door. And my COO at the time, he said, look, we got to consider this, or you're going to keep outpacing. You're either going to slow down or you're going to just run out of cash. And so so we decided to do a competitive process. We talked to 10 VCs. We narrowed that down to 3 or 4. We went and did a roadshow. We narrowed that down to 2. And then we ended up going with Aqualine, and it was definitely the right choice for us. And it was a good deal. It actually helped us tremendously.
I know a lot about Aqualine and about your business, so I understand why they're a great fit. But for the listeners, how did you know that Aqualine was going to be the right fit for you? How did you find the 10? Were they just reaching out to you inbound? Were the junior analysts that are like pinging you and hounding you? Wow. So it's all this inbound, and and I get a lot of those as well. I don't know what databases we end up on at some point. You get flooded with, and I would argue that it's not necessarily the best way to create your pool of investors. We can come back to that in a minute, but I want to just follow this thread first. You have all this inbound interest. You get 10, you go and do a roadshow, you narrow it down to 3, and then you've got 2. What was your criteria for filtering, and why, and how did that filter help you end up on Aqualine?
Yeah, so we did a whole, Excel grid matrix of the things that were important to us, and it's funny because some of them turned out to be wrong anyway. I'd like to highlight them on this call too. So like one of them was minority investment. We only wanted to sell a small portion of the company. We did not want control, right? So we wanted only a 20 to 25% deal. And, valuation was important. Also, I'll talk about that. Also, not as important as you think. And then we wanted kind of clean terms. And we wanted a partner that would bring value, not one that just, sat on the board and didn't bring value or created negative value, which a lot of investors do today. We wanted someone who actually brought value. And so we knew Aqualine was going to be a good fit. I think mostly because of the fact that, Jeff Greenberg was the chairman. And for those that don't know, Jeff Greenberg and the Greenberg family ran Chubb and Marsh McLennan. And, they're like a major insurance family. Star Insurance, his dad ran. So they're highly connected. And then when we asked Aqualine about who their LP base was, it turns out a huge portion of their LP base is also insurance carriers. So we definitely pushed on that button during the investment, so that, if we wanted to have a conversation with someone high up at an LP, we got it.
That's so cool because, a lot of capital allocators talk a big game about the value that they think that they can bring. And then unfortunately, you talk to so many founders, and then the capital allocators, once they get a deal done, they're just so busy on like finding the next deal or raising their own fund. And they don't spend as much time actually taking care of the bets that they've made and actually rolling up their sleeves on it. I think it's so cool that you are actually getting value out of that. Like I've got this framework. I think you and I've talked about this before. I call it like the 3 C's. Whenever I'm looking at a capital allocator, I like to think about them in the categories of, well, capital is the obvious 4th C when you're raising money, but that's kind of like automatic because you're raising money. For me, the three C's are like conversations, connections, and credibility. Conversations is really about culture fit. What's it going to be like working with these people at the board level? Do we have a similar worldview on the right way to build a business? Are they high integrity? Are they going to be value add at the board? Connections, though, is the piece that you were really touching on. And that is like, who do you know in the industry that could help me? Maybe it's other portfolio companies, maybe it's other capital allocators, maybe it's your LP base. But then critically, what kind of influence do you have over them? It's one thing to say, hey, I know the CEO over at like so-and-so, right? Well, and then it's another thing to say, I can get you on a call with him next week, because I've got his cell phone number and he takes my call anytime, right? Which it sounds like Aqualine is doing. Credibility is like, what kind of a message does it send to the market when you raise that amount of capital from this particular partner? Is it going to be accretive to, your sales motion and sales velocity and different things like that? But this connections piece was really, really huge. So it sounds like that was kind of like as you were zeroing in and you said, oh, these guys actually have an LP base. And LP for the listeners is like the limited partners, their source of capital. When a capital allocator is putting money into your business, it's very rarely all their own money. They're going out and raising money from other people that want exposure to startups that are raising capital. And so they go in and they say, we're going to manage that for you. We're going to do all this work to find companies that we can put money into. And the source of their money, the source of Aqualine's money was all these insurance carriers. Voila, you're selling an insurance product. So that was your kind of like one of your primary criteria when you went through. Anything else that was helping you to narrow it down?
I think the relationship was a big portion of it. And I also obviously did background checks on that particular person and on Aqualine by just being smart and looking up their prior portfolio companies, not asking them for references, their prior portfolio companies, finding the CEOs and asking them for a conversation through LinkedIn.
A really important part of this too, which is if you are bootstrapping, right, then you have some leverage because you can bootstrap a while longer, right? And because I think a lot of times people go to VC or the money when they're desperate, right? They're trying to make payroll because they don't have a mousetrap that's working, right? And they need more time or more runway in that. And I think that sets up a set of dominoes that causes what we kind of talked about earlier before we jumped on, which was you raise money for 6-7 straight years. And at the end of the day, the founders get nothing when they exit because they've raised too much money too early in the process, right? And I think that's a really key part of this.
It's a good point too. And I don't think people even understand the way that works. So like if you raise a couple million early and then you start running out of runway, you burn again, you are so disadvantaged when you go to raise again. If you didn't hit your targets for ARR, if you didn't hit your client signups, like you're like dead, like you could die as a company. And I've seen it in some recently where they punt on sales for 2 quarters or 3 quarters, and then they're running out of capital. What do you do? Like my advice to them is get skinny because you're going to down round. You raised at a high valuation. You didn't hit your numbers. Now you're really in trouble.
And it just sets up this cycle where you're more desperate for the cash. So you discount to get it, you take less. And then because you're spending your time raising the cash instead of building a better business, right? Like then the next round, it just happens over and over and over again, right? Thanks for tuning into this episode of Money Mavericks. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to share this episode with someone who needs to hear it.
Stay connected with us on social media and visit our website for exclusive resources, episode transcripts, and more.
Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, making smart moves, and turning your financial dreams into realities.
You've been listening to Money Mavericks, where Mavericks become legends.